My mom threw me out on Christmas as a burden, so I took the bus to Grandma's, and the terrifying secret I found that night taught her a costly lesson. The Christmas turkey was still warm when my mother's words froze the air between us. "You're a burden. Get out of my house." 10 years of military service, the scars I carried, both visible and hidden, meant nothing in that moment. As I stood at the bus stop with snow collecting on my duffel bag, I realized families aren't always built on love. Sometimes they're constructed from perfect lies. What my mother never understood was that breaking someone doesn't destroy them. It creates something new, something dangerous, a person with nothing left to lose and a lifetime of buried truths waiting to be unearthed. She thought casting me out would silence me. Instead, it set me free to discover who I really was and the sister she had tried to erase from both our lives. The bus rattled to a stop in front of the familiar two-story colonial house, its windows glowing with warm light against the December dusk. I stood on the sidewalk, my duffel bag heavy in my grip, not from its contents, but from what this homecoming represented. 10 years in the military, an honorable but medical discharge, and now what? I took a deep breath that stung my lungs in the cold air and walked up the pathway. Before I could knock, the door swung open. "Evelyn," my mother said, her voice neither warm nor cold, just politely distant. "You're later than you said you'd be." There was no hug, no welcome home, no acknowledgement of the scar that ran from my temple to my jaw, a souvenir from my last deployment. "Traffic," I mumbled, though there hadn't been any. I had sat in a coffee shop for 2 hours, delaying the inevitable. Dalia, my mother had always insisted I call her by her first name since I turned 18, stood aside to let me enter. The house smelled of pine and cinnamon, the scent of a perfect Christmas that existed only in her carefully curated world. "Your room, well, I've had to use it for storage since you've been gone so long. You can sleep on the pull-out in the den." She turned away, moving back toward the kitchen where I could hear pots bubbling. "Dinner's at 7. Family will start arriving at 6. I stood in the foyer surrounded by the same paintings, the same side table with its crystal dish for keys, the same mirror that now reflected a stranger back at me. 10 years had changed me in ways invisible to Dalia, who had already disappeared around the corner, her footsteps fading down the hallway. The den was small, with a worn leather couch converted into a bed with military precision, hospital corners on sheets that smelled freshly washed. At least there was that. I dropped my bag and went to find what used to be my bedroom. The door was ajar, and I pushed it open to find cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling, old clothes hanging from a rack, and Christmas decorations spilling out of plastic bins. Nothing remained of my childhood, not the posters, not the bookshelf, not even the blue paint I had chosen when I was 12. It was as if I had never existed here at all. By 6, the house filled with voices and forced laughter. Uncle James and Aunt Patricia arrived first with their college-aged sons, followed by Dalia's book club friends who had somehow earned family status during my absence. Everyone greeted me with awkward smiles and 2 firm handshakes. "So brave," Aunt Patricia said, patting my arm, "but what will you do now, dear?" "Surely not security work, that's so dangerous." "I haven't decided," I answered, though I had spent months researching programs for veterans, possibilities that might give my life purpose again. "Well, you can always go back to school," Uncle James offered, as if I hadn't already earned my degree through night classes between deployments. I nodded, smiling tightly, already exhausted from the small talk. I found myself drifting to the edges of the room, watching the interactions like I was behind glass. They discussed promotions, vacations, and renovation plans. I sipped my water and thought about the dust of Baghdad, the weight of my pack, the friends who had become family more than anyone in this room ever had. The front door burst open at 6:30, bringing a gust of cold air and my younger sister Violet's high-pitched laughter. She entered like a queen, draped in an expensive-looking coat, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the winter wind. Behind her, a tall man with broad shoulders and a square jaw followed, carrying a designer shopping bag. "Mom!" Violet squealed, embracing Dalia with dramatic flair. "Sorry we're late, the traffic was just awful, wasn't it, Brandon?" Brandon nodded, his practiced smile revealing perfect teeth. "Absolute nightmare." "Violet," Dalia beamed, taking her daughter's hands. "You're positively glowing." Violet's smile widened as she placed one manicured hand on her still flat stomach. Well, we were going to wait until after dinner, but I just can't keep it in anymore. She looked around the room, ensuring all eyes were on her. Brandon and I are expecting. The room erupted in congratulations and questions about due dates and morning sickness. I stood frozen, watching the scene unfold like a play I wasn't cast in. When Violet finally noticed me in the corner, her smile faltered for just a moment before recovering. "Evelyn," she said, crossing the room to give me a quick, perfume-scented hug. "Glad you could make it home for once." "Congratulations," I said, meaning it despite the sting of her words. "Thanks," she replied, already turning back to the adoring crowd. "Brandon's parents are thrilled, they're already planning the nursery at their Aspen house for when we visit." Dinner was served at precisely 7, with everyone seated around the large oak table that had been in our family for generations. I was placed at the far end next to one of Dahlia's book club friends whose name I had already forgotten. Violet sat beside our mother, Brandon on her other side, the three of them forming a perfect family portrait. "So, Evelyn," Dahlia said during a lull in conversation, her voice carrying down the table, "Violet was just telling me about her promotion at the firm. She's the youngest senior account executive they've ever had." I nodded, taking a bite of dry turkey. "That's great, Vi. And Brandon's company just went public," Dahlia continued. "They're looking at houses in Briarwood Estates." "Good for them," I said, trying to keep the edge from my voice. "It's such a shame," Dahlia said, speaking to the table rather than to me, "when people don't reach their potential." Violet always knew exactly what she wanted. The implication hung in the air like smoke. I gripped my fork tighter. "I knew what I wanted too," I said quietly. "I wanted to serve my country." Violet laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "You just ran away for a paycheck, Evie. Let's be honest." I felt heat rise to my face. "I sent half my pay home every month for 6 years. I helped put you through college." "No one asked you to," Violet snapped. "Girls," Dahlia warned, but her eyes were fixed on me. The table had gone silent. "I'm sorry my choices don't meet your approval," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "But I did what I thought was right." "You've always been this way," Dahlia said, setting down her wine glass with deliberate care. "Difficult, moody, disappointing." The word landed like a physical blow. Disappointing. After everything I had survived, everything I had sacrificed, I was still just a disappointment to her. "I don't think," I began, but Dahlia wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her eyes cold as she delivered the final strike. "You're a burden. Get out of my house." The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved, no one spoke, no one defended me. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I looked around at the faces, some embarrassed, some averted, none meeting my eyes, not even Violet, not even Russell, my mother's husband of 15 years, who stared down at his plate as if the answer to everything lay in his mashed potatoes. "Merry Christmas," I said to no one in particular, and walked out. In the den, not my room, I grabbed my duffel bag, still packed because some part of me had known this would happen. Outside, snow had begun to fall, dusting the perfect suburban street with white. I walked to the bus station, the only sound the crunch of my boots and my own ragged breathing. The station was nearly empty on Christmas Eve, just a few stragglers with nowhere else to go. I bought a ticket for the last bus heading north toward the only place that had ever truly felt like home, Grandma Clara's farm. As I settled into the hard plastic seat, watching the town lights fade behind us, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief, like I had finally put down a weight I had been carrying for years. Whatever waited for me at Clara's farm, it couldn't be worse than what I had left behind. The bus dropped me off at the edge of town near midnight. The snow had stopped, leaving a pristine blanket over the fields and trees. I walked the last mile to Clara's farm, my breath clouding in the frigid air, my boots crunching a solitary path through the untouched white. The farmhouse appeared over the hill like a lighthouse, a single warm light glowing from the kitchen window. As I approached, the porch light flickered on and the door opened. Clara stood there, tall and straight despite her 78 years, silver hair loose around her shoulders. "I knew you'd come," she said simply, holding out her arms. I fell into her embrace, feeling the strength in her thin frame as she guided me inside. Without asking questions, she sat me by the wood stove, wrapped a handmade quilt around my shoulders, and put a mug of spiced cider in my hands. "Drink," she said. "Then sleep. Tomorrow is time enough for talking." The guest room was just as I remembered, clean pine furniture, quilts stacked at the foot of the bed, windows that would show rolling fields come morning. I fell asleep to the distant hooting of an owl and the creaking of the old house settling into night. Morning came with the smell of coffee and bacon. I found Clara in the kitchen, moving with the deliberate grace of someone who has learned to conserve energy as they age. "Eggs are almost ready," she said, not turning around. "There's coffee in the pot." We ate in comfortable silence, sunshine streaming through windows that needed washing. Clara had always been a woman of few, carefully chosen words. Where Dalia filled every silence with criticism disguised as conversation, Clara let quiet exist as its own form of communication. "The chickens need feeding," she said when we had finished, "and there's wood that needs stacking by the back door." I nodded, grateful for the simple physical tasks. Outside, the winter air was sharp and clean, the world silent except for the chickens clucking impatiently in their coop. I fell into the rhythm of farm chores easily, muscle memory from childhood summers spent here while Dalia found herself through various relationships and career changes. By afternoon, I had fed the animals, stacked wood, and helped Clara sort seeds for spring planting. My body ached, but it was the good kind of pain that comes from useful work. "There's more I could use help with," Clara said. "In the attic, some boxes need moving." The attic stairs creaked under our weight as we climbed. Dust motes danced in shafts of light coming through the small dormer windows. Clara pointed to a stack of boxes near the chimney. "Those need to go over by the east wall," she said. "Mind the floor joists." As I moved the first box, something slipped from between the cardboard and fell to the floor with a metallic clank, a small, tarnished lockbox, its key missing. "What's this?" I asked, picking it up. Clara stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Old things best left alone for now." But as I continued moving boxes, a worn leather-bound book slipped from one of them, falling open to reveal yellowed pages filled with handwriting I didn't recognize. A photograph fluttered out, faded, its edges worn. I picked it up and felt the world tilt beneath me. The photo showed a baby, me, I was sure of it, cradled in the arms of a man I had never seen before. He was young, maybe 25, with dark hair and a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, my eyes. On the back, written in faded ink, "Jude and Evelyn. 3 months. Who is this?" I asked, my voice strange in my ears. Clara took the photo gently from my hands, her face unreadable. "You should rest first," she said. "Then we'll talk." "Clara, who is this man?" I insisted, pointing at the photograph she now held protectively. "Later," she said firmly. "Some things need proper telling." That night, I couldn't sleep. The photo had awakened questions I had never thought to ask. Russell had been my mother's husband since I was 5. I had always assumed he was my father, though he never acted like one. He had been a distant figure, always deferring to Dalia in matters concerning Violet and me. Just after midnight, I heard Clara's voice, low and urgent. I crept to the hallway and saw her on the old rotary phone, half turned away. "She found the picture," Clara was saying. "Yes, of Jude." "No, I haven't told her yet. It has to be done right this time." When she hung up, I stepped into view. "Who are you talking to?" Clara didn't look surprised to see me. "An old friend," she said. "Go back to bed, Evelyn." The next morning brought a visitor. A truck pulled up the long driveway, and a tall man with broad shoulders and work-roughened hands came to the door. He looked to be in his early 40s, with crease-lined eyes and a quiet demeanor. "Morning, Clara," he said, then turned to me with a flash of recognition in his eyes that he quickly masked. "You must be Evelyn." "I'm Ran. I help Clara with the heavy work around here." "Nice to meet you," I said, studying his face. Have we met before? Don't think so, he replied, but his eyes didn't quite meet mine. I'd remember. While Rand fixed a leak in the barn roof, I drove Clara's ancient pickup into town for groceries. The general store was little more than a large room with essentials lining the shelves, but it served the scattered farms in the area. As I placed my items on the counter, the gray-haired woman behind the register stared at me with undisguised curiosity. "You're Clara's granddaughter," she said. It wasn't a question. "I am," I replied, counting out bills. "The daughter who came back," she added with a meaningful look I couldn't interpret. "I'm just visiting," I said, uncomfortable under her scrutiny. She hummed, bagging my groceries with deliberate slowness. Funny how things circle back around, isn't it? Back at the farm, I found Clara sitting at the kitchen table, her hands folded in front of her. The lockbox sat between us, now open. "Sit down, Evelyn," she said. "It's time we talked." My heart pounded as I took the chair across from her. Clara's eyes, the same deep blue as mine, held a mixture of resolve and regret. "Your father," she said, her voice steady but soft, "isn't who you think." 5 simple words that demolished the already shaky foundation of my life. "What do you mean?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Clara sighed, a deep sound that seemed to come from her very soul. "I mean Russell Thompson is not your father. Never was." "Then who?" I began, but she held up one weathered hand. "Some truths have to unfold on their own," she said. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out an old brass key. "There's a room in the back of the barn. Locked. This opens it." I stared at the key in her palm. "What's in there?" "Your history," she said simply. "Go see." The walk to the barn felt eternal. Inside, past the stalls where Clara kept her 2 elderly horses, was a door I had never noticed before, built into the back wall, nearly invisible against the weathered wood. The key turned with a heavy click. The small room was dusty but organized, a metal desk with a reading lamp, shelves lined with books and boxes, and in the center, a wooden trunk with my name carved into its lid. Inside, I found stacks of letters tied with faded ribbon, their envelopes addressed to me but never sent. There was a journal bound in soft leather with the name Wren embossed on its cover, family records, birth certificates, hospital records, some I recognized as mine, others for someone named Wren Bennett, born 2 years before me. I opened the first letter with trembling hands. The handwriting was bold, slanting slightly to the right. "My dearest Evelyn, today you turned 5. I stood across the street from your school and watched you run to your mother's car, your hair in pigtails, your backpack almost as big as you are. You looked happy. I hope you're happy. I dream of the day I can wish you happy birthday in person. But until then, know that I think of you every day. I love you more than you can imagine. Your father, Jude." Letter after letter chronicled birthdays, holidays, achievements he had somehow known about despite never being present. 10 years' worth of letters from a father I never knew existed, full of love, regret, and a desperate longing to be part of my life. The journal was something else entirely. It belonged to someone named Wren, a sister, I realized with growing shock. The entries began when she was 15, full of teenage angst and observations about life with Dia. There were sketches throughout, landscapes, portraits, abstract designs, all showing remarkable talent. I recognized some of the drawings. They matched sketches I had found hidden in my room as a child, drawings I had assumed were from a previous occupant. Dahlia had taken them away when I showed her, saying they were just trash. With the journal and letters clutched to my chest, I returned to the house. Clara sat where I had left her, as if she hadn't moved in the hours I had been gone. "Who is Wren?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "And who is Jude?" Clara closed her eyes briefly, then looked at me with a steady gaze. "Wren is your sister, your full sister. Jude Bennett is your father, your real father. He was the love of your mother's life in college, but her parents didn't approve. He was poor, from a working-class family. They wanted better for Dahlia, so she left him, even though she was pregnant with Wren." Clara nodded when I whispered, "With Wren?" "Yes. Jude didn't know until after Wren was born. By then, Dalia had told everyone the father had abandoned her. Her parents set her up in an apartment in the city, helped her finish school. When Ren was 2, Dalia went back to Jude for one night. You were conceived, but Dalia never told him. My head was spinning. But you knew. I knew, Clara confirmed. Jude and I stayed in touch. When you were small, I used to bring you here for visits. You would play with Ren while Jude and I talked on the porch. You were too young to remember. Dalia allowed this? I asked, disbelieving. Clara's face hardened. She didn't know, until she did. When you were 4, she found out. She threatened to cut me off completely. I would never see you or Ren again if I continued. I had to choose between seeing you on Dalia's terms or not at all. What happened to Ren? I asked, thinking of the journal entries that stopped abruptly when Ren was 17. Clara's eyes grew distant with pain. There was an incident. Dalia had a breakdown one night. Ren got the worst of it. She was hospitalized, then institutionalized. Dalia told everyone Ren had mental health issues, but it was Dalia, I finished, sick to my stomach. Where is Ren now? I don't know, Clara admitted, her voice breaking for the first time. She was released from the institution 10 years ago, but she disappeared. I've been looking ever since. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything. A father who had loved me from afar for my entire life, a sister I couldn't remember, a mother who had systematically erased them both from my history. I need to find her, I said finally. I need to find them both. Clara nodded, tears in her eyes. Yes, she said. It's time. The next morning, I drove to the address listed on Ren's institutional records, a sprawling facility 2 counties over, Pinewood Psychiatric Hospital. The building was newer than I expected, all glass and neutral colors designed to feel less institutional. At the reception desk, a young woman with kind eyes greeted me. How can I help you today? I'm looking for information about a former patient, I said. Ren Bennett. She would have been here about 10 years ago. The receptionist's smile faltered. I'm sorry, but patient information is confidential. Are you family? I'm her sister, I said, the word still strange on my tongue. I just found out about her. Please, I'm trying to find her. She studied my face, seeming to come to a decision. Let me see if Dr. Morris is available. He's been here a long time. He might remember. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Dr. Morris, a thin man with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He steepled his fingers as he considered me. Ren Bennett, he said finally. Yes, I remember her well. Talented artist. Quiet. Never should have been here in the first place. What do you mean? I asked. He sighed. She didn't have any diagnosable condition that warranted long-term care. Her mother insisted, brought documentation from another doctor, now discredited, claiming Ren had dangerous tendencies. He shook his head. I never saw evidence of that. When I began the process to release her, her mother fought vigorously, but she was released eventually, when she turned 21. Legal adult, her mother couldn't keep her here anymore. He hesitated. But she never went home. She checked herself out with just the clothes on her back and a sketchbook. No one came for her. Do you have any idea where she went? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Dr. Morris's expression softened. No, I'm sorry. We tried to follow up, but she didn't want to be found. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Miss Bennett, there was one thing. Before she left, Ren painted a mural in our recreation room. It's still there. You might want to see it. The mural covered an entire wall, a landscape I recognized immediately as Clara's farm, seen from the hill behind the barn. In the foreground stood 3 figures, an older woman with silver hair, a young woman in military uniform, and between them, slightly apart, a woman with a paintbrush in her hand. It was us, Clara, me, and Ren, as we might have been if life had gone differently. She had painted a future that never happened, a family that had been torn apart before it could exist. I drove back to the farm in a daze, my mind racing with questions. Who had Ren become? Where was Jude now? And how had Dalia managed to erase them so completely from our lives? Clara was waiting on the porch when I returned, her face tight with concern. Someone was here, she said without preamble. While you were gone, the barn room is a mess. We hurried to the barn where the locked room stood open, its contents strewn across the floor. Letters were scattered everywhere, the journal was missing, and the wooden trunk had been emptied. Who would do this? I asked, kneeling to gather the letters. Clara's voice was grim. Someone who doesn't want the truth to come out. As we sorted through the chaos, a truck pulled up outside. Rand appeared in the doorway, his expression changing from casual to alarmed as he took in the scene. What happened? He asked, crouching to help us. Someone broke in? I explained. They were looking for something specific. Rand picked up one of the letters, his eyes scanning the signature at the bottom. Jude Bennett, he said, his voice strangely hollow. You found out. I froze. You know about Jude? Rand's gaze met mine, unflinching. I know Ren, he said simply. I dated her before she disappeared. The world seemed to stop. You knew my sister all this time? He nodded, shamefaced. I promised not to say anything. She was scared, terrified of your mother finding her again. Do you know where she is now? I demanded. No, he said, but I know where she was. We need to check the attic again. Back in the farmhouse, Ran led us to a section of the attic I hadn't explored. Behind a stack of old furniture was a loose floorboard. Underneath, wrapped in cloth, was an audio cassette labeled in faded ink, For When She Asks. Clara's hands trembled as she held it. I'd forgotten about this, she whispered. Ren made it before she was taken away. We found an old cassette player in Clara's bedroom. The tape hissed and crackled before a young woman's voice filled the room, clear, determined, and frightened. If you're listening to this, Evelyn, it means you finally came home. Really home, to Clara's. I don't know when that will be or if I'll still be around when it happens. But there are things you need to know that no one else will tell you. The voice, Ren's voice, detailed years of emotional and physical abuse at Dalia's hands, how Dalia would fly into rages then act as if nothing had happened, how she would threaten and manipulate, playing Ren and me against each other when we were small. The night everything changed, I threatened to tell someone what was really happening. I was 17, almost free. She hit me so hard I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in the hospital and she was telling everyone I'd had a psychotic break. No one believed me. No one but Clara and Jude, and they couldn't help without risking losing you too. When the tape ended, the three of us sat in stunned silence. Finally, Clara spoke. I tried to report it, she said, her voice rough with old grief. I went to the police with the hospital records. They said it was a family matter. Dalia had too many connections, too much respectability. We need to try again, I said firmly. With this tape, with the letters, with everything we have. Rand shook his head. It might not be enough. Too much time has passed. But he hesitated. There's something else. Something Ren showed me once. That evening, as twilight settled over the farm, Rand appeared with a slim package. Inside was a USB drive. Ren gave me this for safekeeping, he explained as we gathered around Clara's ancient computer. Said it was insurance. The drive contained dozens of emails, correspondence between Dalia and Russell spanning years. In them, they discussed handling the Ren situation and making sure Evelyn never finds out about Jude. There were scanned copies of falsified medical records, conversations with doctors willing to diagnose conditions that didn't exist, and payments to keep people quiet. We need to get this to a journalist, I said, someone who can't be bought. We found a local reporter with a reputation for integrity and anonymously sent copies of everything, the tape, the emails, the medical records. Days passed with no story appearing. Then, a week after we had sent the evidence, a letter arrived in Clara's mailbox. No return address, no signature, just 7 words, Ren's alive. Ask Ren about the cabin. I confronted Ran that evening as he finished repairing Clara's roof. "What cabin?" I demanded, showing him the note. His face paled. "I haven't been there in years," he said. "It's deep in the woods on the north side of Clara's property. Ran used to go there to paint. It was her sanctuary." The next morning, Ran led me and Clara through the forest, following a path only he could see. After an hour of hiking, we reached a small clearing where a simple wooden cabin stood, its windows shuttered. "It was abandoned when we found it," Ran explained. "Ran fixed it up, made it her own." The door wasn't locked. Inside, dust covered everything, but beneath the layer of time, the cabin was clearly someone's home: a small bed in one corner, a wood stove, shelves lined with books and art supplies, and covering every wall, paintings, landscapes, portraits, abstract pieces filled with emotion. But what caught my breath were the newer canvases propped against the far wall. The paint was fresher, the style more refined, but unmistakably from the same hand. Someone had been here recently. On one wall hung a series of portraits, me in uniform in different places at different ages. She had been painting me all these years, keeping me close the only way she could. In the center of the room stood a locked trunk. Ran produced a key from his pocket. "She gave me this," he said, "just in case." Inside the trunk were photographs, Ran as an adult with long dark hair and my same blue eyes. In some she smiled at the camera from different locations: a beach, a city street, a mountain overlook. She was alive. She was free. She had built a life. A sketchbook lay at the bottom of the trunk, its pages filled with drawings of the three of us, Clara, Ren, and me, together in scenes that had never happened: Christmas mornings, birthday celebrations, ordinary moments of a family that should have been. As I clutched the sketchbook to my chest, a noise outside made us all freeze. Footsteps on the porch, the door handle turning slowly. Through the crack in the door, I caught a glimpse of a woman with long dark hair and familiar blue eyes that widened in shock as they met mine. Then she was gone, disappearing into the trees like a ghost. "Ren," I called, rushing to the door. "Ren, wait." But the forest had already swallowed her. All that remained was the echo of my voice and the certainty that my sister, the sister I never knew I had, was watching from somewhere among the silent trees. "We need to go after her," I said, already moving toward the door. Ran caught my arm. "Not like this," he warned. "She'll just disappear deeper. She survived this long by staying hidden." "But she's my sister," I protested, the word still new and strange on my tongue. "And she's terrified," Clara said softly. "Remember what she's been through, Evelyn. To her, the world isn't safe." Reluctantly, I let them lead me back to the farmhouse. Night had fallen by the time we arrived, and an unfamiliar car was parked in the driveway: sleek, black, expensive. "Stay behind me," Ran murmured, stepping in first. The kitchen light was on. Sitting at Clara's worn oak table was Dahlia, her perfectly manicured hands wrapped around a teacup as if she belonged there. She looked up as we entered, her eyes cold as they swept over me. "Mother," I said flatly. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you, of course," she replied, her voice honeyed with false concern. "You left so suddenly. The family was worried." "No, they weren't," I said, "and neither were you." Clara moved to stand beside me. "You need to leave, Dahlia. You're not welcome here." Dahlia's smile hardened. "In my own mother's house? I think not." Her gaze shifted to something behind us. "Besides, I believe you have something that belongs to me." I turned to see Russell in the doorway to the living room, holding Ren's journal and the cassette tape. "Put those down," I demanded. "Family property," Russell said with a shrug. "Just cleaning up loose ends." "Those aren't yours," Clara said, her voice stronger than I had ever heard it. "They belong to Ren and to Evelyn." "Ren?" Dahlia spat the name like a curse. "Always Ren, the troubled one, the special one. She nearly destroyed this family with her lies." "The only liar here is you," I said, stepping forward. "We know everything: the abuse, the false diagnosis, how you hid my real father from me." Something flickered in Dahlia's eyes, fear, maybe, or rage, before she controlled it. You always were gullible, Evelyn. Believing whatever story made you feel special. It's not a story, Rand said, holding up his phone. It's all documented, the emails between you and Russell, the falsified medical reports, everything. Dahlia's composure slipped for just a moment. She glanced at Russell, who had gone pale. We should go, he said quietly. Now. This isn't over, Dahlia hissed as she stood. You have no idea who you're dealing with. After they left, we discovered the extent of the damage. The farmhouse had been thoroughly searched, drawers emptied, closets ransacked. The remaining letters from Jude were gone. They're scared, Clara said as we cleaned up. They wouldn't have come themselves if they weren't. That night, none of us slept well. I kept thinking I heard noises outside my window, footsteps in the snow, whispers on the wind. But morning came without incident, bright winter sunshine spilling across the kitchen floor as we ate breakfast. Rand arrived early, his truck loaded with lumber and tools. Thought I'd fix up the barn room properly, he explained. Make it secure. While he worked, Clara and I sorted through what remained of our evidence. Without the letters and journal, we had only the digital copies of emails on Rand's phone and our own testimonies. It might not be enough, I admitted, frustrated, especially against someone like Dahlia. There's still the audio tape, Clara reminded me. Russell took it, but I made a copy years ago. It's with a lawyer in town, Margaret Wilson. She's kept it safe for me. Margaret Wilson's law office was a small brick building on Main Street. The attorney herself was a formidable woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Clara called ahead, she said, ushering us into her office. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. From her safe, she retrieved not just a copy of Rand's tape but a thick file of documents, medical reports, police statements, and affidavits from former household staff who had witnessed Dahlia's abuse. I've been building this case for 15 years, Margaret explained. Ever since Clara first came to me about Ren, we never had enough to move forward. Dahlia's influence was too strong, and Ren disappeared before we could get her testimony. She looked at me intently. But with you here now, that changes everything. Back at the farm, we found the barn room restored and reinforced with a new sturdy door. Rand was just finishing up when my phone rang, an unknown number. Hello, I answered cautiously. The journalist you contacted is compromised, a woman's voice said quickly. Dahlia got to him. Don't trust the authorities in town either. Who is this? I asked, though I already knew. A pause. You know who? Another pause. Come to the cabin tonight, alone, at midnight. The line went dead. Ren? Clara asked, seeing my face. I nodded, my heart racing. She wants to meet tonight. Rand looked concerned. It could be a trap. Dahlia could have found the cabin. It's not a trap, I said with certainty. It was her. I know it was. That night, I made my way through the dark forest alone, following the path we had taken earlier. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light through the bare branches. Every sound made me jump, the crack of a twig, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of something moving through the underbrush. The cabin appeared just as before, but now a faint light glowed from behind the shuttered windows. I hesitated at the edge of the clearing, suddenly unsure. I've been watching you, a voice said from the shadows. Since you arrived at Clara's. She stepped into the moonlight, a woman my age with long dark hair and my same blue eyes, taller than me by a few inches, thinner, her movements cautious as a deer's. Ren, I breathed. She nodded, keeping her distance. You look like him, like Jude. You know where he is? I asked, hope flaring. No, she said. We lost touch years ago. It was safer that way. Slowly, as if approaching a wild animal, I took a step toward her. I didn't know about you, about him, all these years, I didn't know. I know, she said. I've been following your life from a distance. I knew when you enlisted, when you were deployed, when you were injured. She gestured toward my scarred face. I painted you to remember you, to keep you close. Another step closer. Why didn't you contact me before? Fear, she said simply. Dalia has resources, connections. I was afraid she'd find me and finish what she started. Her eyes darkened with memory. And I didn't know if you'd believe me over her. I believe you, I said fiercely. I've seen the evidence. I know what she did. Ren studied me for a long moment, then nodded toward the cabin. Come inside. There's more you need to see. The cabin was warm, a small fire burning in the wood stove. Every surface was covered with paintings, landscapes, abstracts, and dozens of portraits of me at different ages in different places. On a small table lay a stack of newspaper clippings, stories about my unit's deployments, my commendation ceremony, anything that mentioned my name. You've been tracking me all this time, I said, touched and unsettled in equal measure. You're my sister, she said, as if that explained everything, and perhaps it did. From beneath a floorboard, Ren produced a metal box. Inside were more letters from Jude, photos of the three of us together when I was too young to remember, and a flash drive. This is the real reason Dalia is panicking, she said, holding up the drive. It contains recordings of her threatening me, admitting to falsifying medical records, and discussing with Russell how to keep you from finding out about Jude. She didn't know I was recording her visits to the institution. This is what we need, I said, excitement building. With this, we can finally expose her. Ren's smile was sad. It won't be easy. She'll fight hard. Then we'll fight harder, I promised. Together. As we walked back to the farmhouse in the pre-dawn light, Ren told me about her life since escaping the institution, how she lived off the grid, moving from place to place, supporting herself with her art sold under a pseudonym, how she had watched me from afar, too afraid to reach out but unwilling to sever the last connection to family she had. Clara was waiting on the porch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders against the chill. When she saw Ren, she let out a small cry and stood, arms outstretched. My girl, she whispered as Ren stepped into her embrace. My brave, beautiful girl. The next few days were a blur of planning and preparation. Margaret Wilson brought in a trusted journalist friend from a major newspaper. We compiled all our evidence, Ren's recordings, the medical records, the emails, the testimonies. Together, it formed an undeniable picture of systematic abuse and manipulation spanning decades. Ren was terrified but resolute. I've been running for 10 years, she said. I'm tired of hiding. While the journalist prepared the story, we received word that Dalia was planning a charity gala at her home, a perfect opportunity to confront her with witnesses present. It's risky, Margaret warned. She'll have home field advantage. But she won't expect all of us together, I pointed out, and she certainly won't expect Ren. The night of the gala arrived. Ran drove us in his truck, parking a block away from Dalia's house. Through the windows, we could see the party in full swing, well-dressed guests mingling, champagne flowing, Dalia at the center of it all in an elegant black dress. Remember the plan, Margaret said as we approached the front door. Stay calm. Stick together. Let the evidence speak for itself. The doorman tried to stop us, but Margaret presented her invitation, procured through connections I didn't ask about, and we were inside. Heads turned as our unlikely group moved through the crowd. I scanned the room and spotted Violet near the grand piano, her pregnancy now showing beneath her designer dress. Our eyes met across the room, her champagne glass froze halfway to her lips, her face draining of color as she recognized me, and then Ren beside me, unmistakably my sister despite the years apart. Dalia noticed the disturbance and turned. For just a moment, genuine fear flashed across her face before her social mask slammed back into place. Well, she said with brittle brightness, what an unexpected surprise. We need to talk, I said evenly. All of us. Now. This is hardly the time or place for a family discussion, Dalia replied, her smile fixed as she glanced around at her curious guests. It's exactly the right time, Rin said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. Unless you'd prefer we share everything with your friends first. Dalia's smile vanished. My office. Now. She turned to her guests. Please excuse me for a moment. Family matter. In the wood-paneled office, Dalia positioned herself behind her desk like a general preparing for battle. Russell stood beside her, his face pale and sweating. Violet hovered near the door, looking confused and frightened. What is this about? Dalia demanded once the door was closed. This, Margaret said, placing a tablet on the desk, and this. A thick folder of documents. And this. Ren's recordings ready to play. We know everything, I said, about Jude, about how you abused Ren and had her committed on false pretenses, about how you've lied to me my entire life. Ridiculous, Dalia scoffed, but her hands were shaking. These are the delusions of a troubled girl and a bitter old woman. They're not delusions, Ren said quietly. She pressed play on the recordings. Dalia's voice filled the room, cold and threatening. If you ever tell anyone what really happened, I'll make sure you never leave this place. No one will believe you anyway. You're crazy, remember? I have the papers to prove it. Violet gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Mom, what is this? It's nothing, Dalia snapped. Doctored recordings. Fabricated evidence. It's not fabricated, Russell said suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. We all turned to look at him. Russell, Dalia warned. Don't. He shook his head, shoulders slumping. I can't do this anymore, Dalia. It's over. He looked at me, then at Ren. I'm sorry. I should have stopped her years ago. I knew what she was doing to Ren. I knew about Jude. I helped her hide it all. You coward, Dalia hissed. Yes, he agreed, meeting her gaze for perhaps the first time. I am. But not anymore. Violet moved away from the door, her face ashen. Is it true? Did you? She couldn't finish the sentence. Your mother has a temper, Russell said gently. You never saw the worst of it. She made sure of that. You were always her favorite, Ren told Violet. The good daughter, the one who did everything right. Violet looked stricken. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear I didn't know. A touching family reunion, Dalia said, her voice dripping with contempt, but ultimately meaningless. You have no real power here. We have the truth, I said, and tomorrow, everyone else will too. I nodded toward the journalist waiting outside. The story runs in the morning, complete with Russell's testimony, the recordings, the medical records, everything. You wouldn't dare, Dalia said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Watch us, Ren replied. Your career, your reputation, your social standing, it all ends tomorrow, Margaret added calmly. Unless what? Dalia demanded. Unless you confess now, on camera, to everything. Dalia laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Never. Then I will, Russell said, straightening his shoulders. I've kept quiet too long. What followed was a full, devastating confession, Russell speaking steadily into the journalist's camera, detailing years of Dalia's manipulation, abuse, and lies, how she had hidden Jude from me, how she had created false medical records to have Ren committed, how she had threatened and bullied anyone who got in her way. Throughout it all, Dalia sat rigidly behind her desk, her face a mask of cold fury. When Russell finished, she looked at each of us in turn. Get out of my house, she said, her voice deadly quiet. All of you. Gladly, Ren replied, but we're not done. Not by a long shot. Outside, Violet caught up with us, tears streaming down her face. I want to help, she said. Whatever it takes. I'm so sorry, to both of you. I didn't know. 2 days later, the story broke, prominent businesswoman's dark secret, decades of abuse and deception exposed. Russell's confession combined with Ren's recordings and the documentation created a sensation. More witnesses came forward, former household staff, Dalia's personal assistant, even her former therapist who had suspected abuse but had been pressured into silence. The police opened an investigation. Child Welfare Services reviewed the case. The medical licensing board began examining the doctors who had falsified Ren's records. Dahlia's carefully constructed world collapsed like a house of cards. Her business partners distanced themselves. Her charity board asked for her resignation. Friends stopped taking her calls. Through it all, we watched from the safety of Clara's farm, Ren still too nervous to stay in town. Violet joined us, having left Brandon after discovering he had known parts of the truth and said nothing. "I need to figure out who I am," she told us one evening as we sat on Clara's porch, without her influence. "It takes time," Ren said, her first words directly to Violet in years. "Not forgiveness, not yet, but a beginning." 1 week after the story broke, Margaret called with news. The police wanted formal statements from both me and Ren. Dahlia was under investigation for multiple charges, from child abuse to fraud. "It's really happening," I said to Ren as we drove into town. "She's finally facing consequences." Ren's expression was complex: relief, vindication, and an old, deep sadness. "I never thought I'd see this day," she admitted. "I thought she'd get away with it forever." After giving our statements, we stopped by Margaret's office where she had news. "I found him," she said simply. "Who?" I asked, though my heart already knew. "Jude Bennett, your father. He's alive, living in Oregon. I have his contact information if you want it." Ren and I looked at each other, a lifetime of loss and longing passing between us. "Yes," we said in unison. "We want it." Spring came early to Clara's farm, melting the snow and revealing tender green shoots pushing through the dark earth. In the 3 months since confronting Dahlia, our lives had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. The old barn, once just a weathered structure housing hay and tools, was now becoming something new. Ren supervised the renovation, turning the space into what Ren and I envisioned, an art center for veterans and trauma survivors. Large windows let in natural light, illuminating easels and workstations where people could create, heal, and connect. "The south wall still needs reinforcing," Rand said one afternoon as we inspected the progress, "but it'll be ready to open by summer." "It's perfect," Ren replied, her hand brushing against his briefly, a small gesture that spoke volumes about their rekindled relationship. Clara watched the transformation from her rocking chair on the porch, her body growing frilier even as her spirit remained strong. At 82, she moved more slowly now, but her eyes were bright with satisfaction as she saw her granddaughters rebuilding what had been broken. "I always knew this day would come," she told me one evening as we sat together watching the sunset. "I just prayed I'd live to see it." "You've seen it and more," I assured her, holding her weathered hand in mine. "And there's still more to come." The legal proceedings against Dahlia moved forward steadily. She had been charged with multiple counts of child abuse, fraud, and witness tampering. Russell had accepted a plea deal in exchange for his testimony, and the doctors who had falsified Ren's records were under investigation by the medical board. Most surprisingly, a documentary filmmaker had approached us, wanting to tell our story. After careful consideration, we agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to shed light on family abuse and the institutional failures that had allowed Dahlia to maintain her deception for so long. "Your story matters," the filmmaker Sarah told us during our first interview. "It could help others who were silenced, forgotten, erased." The filming process was both healing and painful, requiring us to revisit trauma we would rather forget. But together, Ren and I found strength in speaking our truth. Clara participated too, her soft voice strengthening as she recounted the years of trying to protect us within the limitations of her power. On a warm May afternoon, my phone rang, a number from my old military unit. "Sergeant Bennett," a familiar voice said when I answered. "It's Alvarez. I saw you on the news, the documentary preview. I just wanted to say we're all proud of you. What you're doing now is as brave as anything you did in uniform." The call left me in tears, overwhelmed by the connection to the people who had been my family for a decade. That evening, I began writing, trying to make sense of my journey from soldier to survivor to advocate. Ren's sketches covered the walls around me, visual anchors for the narrative I was struggling to shape. "It doesn't have to be perfect," Ren reminded me, looking over my shoulder at the pages scattered across the desk. "It just has to be true." June brought a letter from Violet, who had moved to Seattle to start fresh. She was in therapy, she wrote, learning to understand how Dahlia's manipulation had shaped her own behavior. She had left Brandon permanently after discovering his complicity in hiding information about Ren's whereabouts years ago. I don't expect forgiveness, she wrote. I just want you both to know I'm trying to be better, to be worthy of being your sister someday. It was a start, tentative, fragile, but real. Ren's art career bloomed unexpectedly when a gallery owner from Portland saw her work in the documentary preview. He offered her a showing featuring both her landscape pieces and the series of portraits she had painted of me over the years. I'm not sure I'm ready, she confessed the night before the opening, anxiety making her hands tremble as she arranged the final display. You are, I assured her. We both are. The exhibition was a revelation. People packed the small gallery, moved to tears by the story behind the paintings. A portrait of me in uniform, painted from a newspaper photo during my second deployment, became the centerpiece, a symbol of resilience that resonated beyond our personal story. As summer settled over the farm, bringing lush growth and golden evenings, we received word that Dahlia had accepted a plea deal. She would serve time, though not as much as we had hoped. More importantly, her reputation was irreparably damaged, her power to harm others diminished. Is it enough? Ren asked as we discussed the news over dinner. It has to be, Ren said after a long pause. Justice is imperfect, but we're free. That's what matters. Clara's health began to decline as July turned to August. The doctors spoke of her heart growing weaker, of systems beginning to shut down. We moved her bed to the sunroom where she could watch the birds and feel the breeze through open windows. I have something to tell you both, she said one evening, her voice thin but determined. Jude is coming. I called him. He'll be here tomorrow. Ren and I exchanged startled glances. We had been in contact with our father via phone and email for months, building a tentative relationship, but neither of us had felt ready for an in-person meeting. Are you sure? I asked, my heart racing. Clara smiled, her blue eyes, our eyes, crinkling at the corners. I'm sure. It's time. The next day dawned clear and perfect, as if the weather itself approved of this long-awaited reunion. Ran helped Clara into her favorite chair on the porch, wrapped in quilts despite the summer warmth. Ran and I sat on either side of her, a united front against the uncertainty of meeting the man who had loved us from afar for so long. When the rental car pulled up the long driveway, I felt Ren's hand slip into mine, squeezing tight. The man who emerged was tall and straight-backed despite his 60-plus years. His hair was silver now, not the dark brown of the photographs, but his eyes, my eyes, Ren's eyes, Clara's eyes, were exactly the same. He stopped at the foot of the porch steps, emotion making it impossible for him to speak. We stared at each other, three people connected by blood but separated by decades of deliberate distance. Clara broke the silence. Jude, she said softly. Come meet your daughters properly this time. He climbed the steps slowly, as if afraid we might disappear if he moved too quickly. When he reached the top, Ren stood first, drawn to him by some invisible thread of recognition. Ren, he breathed, his voice breaking. My Ren. Their embrace broke something loose in me, some final barrier. I stood and joined them, feeling his arms wrap around us both, hearing his whispered apologies and love against our hair. You have nothing to be sorry for, I told him fiercely. Nothing. I should have fought harder, he insisted. I should have found a way. You loved us, Ren said simply. We know that now. It's enough. 2 weeks later, as the first leaves began to turn, Clara passed peacefully in her sleep, Ren and I on either side of her bed, Jude in a chair nearby. She left us the farm in her will along with a letter asking us to heal here, grow here, love here. On the day of her memorial service, we planted a maple tree on the hill overlooking the farm, Clara's favorite spot. As we patted the soil around its tender roots, I looked out over the fields that had become home, at the barn that was now a place of healing, at my sister and father beside me. What now? Ren asked softly. I thought about the memoir I was writing, the art center taking shape, the documentary that would soon share our story with the world. I thought about the quiet peace I had found here, not in running away, as Violet had once accused, but in finally coming home to truth. Now we live, I said, my hand finding hers the way we were always meant to. As the golden light of late afternoon washed over us, I felt something settle in my soul, not an ending, but a beginning. The journey hadn't been what any of us had expected, but we had arrived together at a place of honesty and possibility. It was enough. It was everything.